All right, I think we're all set. Okay, everybody. Welcome back to Summer of Drawing. And we're on class number 19, and I just can't believe it. It has been a fabulous summer, and I've really enjoyed having the opportunity to teach, about the different drawing media, but also all of this other information I've been trying to cram in. So these last two classes are me sort of trying to bring it all together for you, and also show you where to go next in general. And I don't mean just, like with charcoal or Conte crayon or whatever, but how to continue what you're doing already. So I know that you're using your observation and you're practicing as often as you can. Um, and that can be difficult, especially in the height of summer and if you're working and that sort of thing. But it's really important, even if you're just doodling, even if you're just sketching your coffee cup, to keep your hand in practice, so that those muscles, those small muscles in your hand, just don't get rusty. And that way, when you do have time to sit down and actually, do something a little bit more involved, I think it's just that much easier if you don't feel like, oh, not my fingers aren't even working, never mind everything else. So today we're going to be talking about memory and imagination. And I've got a little bit of explanation to go through before we get to the exercises. And I want to just sort of allay your fears right up front. We'll be doing some stuff that might be a little different this week and next week, but I don't want you to get, stressed about it. You can always go back if you're confused. You can always go back and look at the video again later, or email me with questions, or tell me if there's something that you don't think I explained quite right. Because I'm going to throw a little bit of vocabulary at you, but we're also going to be thinking about art concepts on a little bit of a higher plane than just, how does the charcoal work or how does graphite work? So let's get started. I'll go ahead and screen share here. So here we are. Welcome back to Summer of Drawing, class number 19, all media, memory, and imagination. So just to give you a couple of definitions, it's not like you don't know this already, but memory is the faculty by which the mind stores and remembers information. So when I talk about memory, I'll be talking about it as if you had a slide carousel or a database that was full of imagery. And the way that we store and remember that information is what I term our memory. Imagination is being able to take those images or other ideas and make something up for which we don't necessarily have an image in that database. So the faculty or action of forming new ideas or images or concepts of external objects not present to the senses. And it's also, imagination is also the ability of the mind to be creative or resourceful, which is sometimes what we actually have to do in order to make a really good piece of art. So I've got a number of pieces of art that I'll be showing you as we go through while I'm talking about this. And I wanted to start off with this piece, "The Shortening Winter's Day is Near a Close." So Ferguson was a very well-off fellow in Scotland. He had something like 20,000 acres of land, and he had time on his hands to pursue a lot of painting. He also was definitely a person who was creative and resourceful, in addition to, sort of having this wealth of time and opportunity. This particular painting, for example, shows some of the flock of sheep that he actually made up. They're fake sheep, and he had them. He would put them out in various different settings to give the idea of, sheep doing whatever he wanted to while he painted. The poor fellow is one of his employees who evidently he directed to stand there in the cold while he was doing this painting. But the idea here is that Ferguson didn't chase his sheep around his land, waiting for them to do the perfect thing. He studied what the sheep looked like. He understood what they looked like. And then he used this memory bank of information to then take these fake sheep that he'd set up and make them look real. So artists are translators and communicators, and visual imagery is our language. So a writer has a written language, and we have pictures. They have shapes and textures, but we also, to a great extent, writing is visual imagery as well. If you think of the letters and how they form words, and then those words form paragraphs and sentences. For example, when we go grocery shopping and we make a list, we use words, apples, bananas, whatever it is we want. But those combinations of shapes are symbols, symbols that mean an apple. And we understand that because we have this visual imagery in common. We could just as easily make that grocery list by putting a little picture of an apple and a little picture of a banana. It would be the same thing, and those images would be understood by many people. So our goal is to communicate effectively, even if it's just to ourselves. So if you think about abstract artists, for example, and their visual imagery, they are pulling meaning out that may not be obvious to other people, but it is to them. When they feel that a painting has succeeded, that abstract artist knows it has communicated something to themselves, and then they're hoping that others will see within that the language that they're speaking in, their visual language. So it's frustrating, especially for beginners, when we can't speak clearly and think of witty or profound or clever concepts, or respond to events in a way that move us. We might come up with a response to a current event that seems formulaic or trite. And that is because we're not pulling on a deeper understanding of how we can use imagery in our memory and our imaginations to go a little beyond a formulaic response to something. So this is something that we develop over time. So step one and step two in developing our ability to communicate effectively involves observation and practice. And we are using for our chosen sort of vehicle for doing any kind of observation and practice this summer, our visual expression, we're using drawing. So I had to throw this in there. Yes, that was me, age 3 years, 1 month. My mother says it was a horse, but I think it's a mouse. Regardless, when we're children, we draw in a very unburdened way, and we practice all the time. We're just drawing away. We don't tie ourselves up in knots, and we are happy to be imaginative. So when we talk about kind of, tuning back into that, it's not, I don't want you to draw like this, but I do want you to think imaginatively about whatever the subject is that you are going to be drawing. So practice, of course, helps you develop your technique, keeps your hand steady, control of the pencils. You become more adept at mark making, doing hatching and that sort of thing. It's very much like when we learned how to draw our letters, and then we were able to make words, and then we could write sentences and that sort of thing. So practicing drawing just for the sake of keeping your hand moving, being pretty comfortable with hatching and all of that sort of thing, different values, light and dark, it's no different than learning how to write. It's exactly the same sort of thing. And then we observe the world really closely. And of course, that's been key to this whole summer is, how to look a little bit more deeply than most people do, how to find those interesting things out there in a scene and bring them to life in a way that makes people not really even understand how we managed to do it. And it was just a matter of observing a little bit more closely what was going on. So your artistic expression can vary quite a bit depending on the situation. It can be a quick sketch, something detailed, just the same way you might write a text for something and you might write a book for some other idea. You're not tied into any one way. And I'm pointing out this particular painting, The Last Judgment. Michelangelo used memory and imagination extensively here. Now, he'd also practiced a lot and observed a lot. He had models, all sorts of things. But I guarantee you, he didn't actually see this scene, at least I don't think he did, actually see this scene in front of him and then decide to paint it from life. Oh, you angels, you just hold it right there because I'm going to paint you. No, he pulled on all of this information he had, all of this memory, this imagination. He knew how the form looked because he'd drawn it so many times. So this is what starts to make your art really unique. Your style, people talk about style all the time, and there's a tendency to think that style is just technique, like, that person is always using those kinds of brush strokes. But your style really has everything to do with, it has technique involved, your artistic point of view, those images you've got stored in your memory, how your imagination works. And as you continue to draw, you'll make choices that are different than the person in the next Zoom box over from you. Each of us are going to look at things differently. And the further we go down that path, the more our style will develop all by itself, just by observing, practicing, and using our memory and imagination. So there's no need to force it. There's no need to worry about your style. It will happen all by itself if you're doing art. It won't happen. It doesn't just sort of like, style is there and now we draw. It's the other way around. So how we draw naturally is the starting point for developing this style. As we observe and practice drawing, technique improves and technical likes and dislikes start to emerge. You might be like me, struggling with some things and others you're just drawn to. And you're like, oh, I just want to do another drawing using that. I want to try that again. So these sorts of things will happen to you over time. I show this picture here by Charles White, who, if you look at his work, employed a number of different styles depending on what it was he was, trying to do. He was experimenting. He was, but there's a thread to his work that you'll see, because there were some natural things that he always gravitated to in terms of what kind of contrast he liked, how he liked to do his pencil strokes. So you can't get there without putting in the pencil miles. This is hugely important. So learn what you choose to by studying the masters who you admire, reading books, art history, visiting museums and galleries, and all of that. It's all really perfect. But refrain from following the style of other artists too closely, or your own style may never get a chance to bloom. So the same goes for classes and such. It's great to take classes from people, but if you find yourself year after year never really stopping and doing your own art and just moving from teacher to teacher, it's time to take a break and do your own work for a while and let that style come through. What happens is we become afraid. We become afraid to let go, and afraid that our own memory bank, our own imagination, those images and the way we draw are not good enough. And so we tend to cling to other people's style. So step one is practice and observation, which you're already doing. Step two is developing our own visual point of view to express this language, express the things that we want to say. So even if we were making that grocery list with apples and bananas on, they would be drawn the way we like to draw them. We would have let that out, however it was we wanted to do it. So over time, we have to start thinking about, well, what do we like and what don't we like? What has particular meaning to us? So it could be objects around your house that you really just love. And you're like, you know what? These objects really do mean something to me. I want to put them together in arrangement and work on some of these other things, practice and technique and all the rest of it, but using something that has deep meaning to me. And some things captivate us, and it could be the light that we saw shining on a bowl of fruit. It doesn't have to be something deep. And then there are how our experiences have shaped us. So we often have viewpoints that we don't even really, that we haven't analyzed, that we haven't said, oh gosh, I think this because of this or that or the other. It's good to sort of have an understanding a little bit about how our past experiences might have caused us to like or dislike certain things. Perhaps that's even something we want to exaggerate or emphasize. And also what we might visually want to convey to others. So in those, what I mean by that is that, like when I do portraits, for example, that's a really perfect example. I'm trying to convey, for example, to a person's family, the spirit and essence of this person who may no longer be with them. I've got a particular goal in mind, and I have to pull on my resources of observation and technique and memory and imagination to make that happen. So these are things that we develop over time. And as we start to think about these concepts, our own visual point of view starts to emerge. This is the great advantage that more mature artists have over younger artists. So this is why it's never a problem if you are later coming to drawing or painting, because you've got a storehouse, a wealth of points of view and ideas that a younger person has not yet developed, regardless of how good their technique is. So a point of view doesn't have to be a big idea. In fact, sometimes the most clearly articulated ideas are the well-known universal ones, like beauty and peace and sadness, or it can be our reactions to the world, like grandeur or splendor. And I show Thomas Cole's work here with one of the longest titles in history. But I mean, the splendor, right? The the sweep of the land, the huge clouds, all of that. He was making a statement about something he saw and wanted to convey by using this big idea. And then within there, he's got small stuff. He's got trees and leaves and clouds and this, that, and the other. But the big idea is there. Now, your big idea might be, look at the beautiful light on the bowl of fruit. It doesn't have to be something like this. But what it is a kind of a viewpoint through which you're looking at whatever it is you're going to draw and paint. And there's something about that. The point of view can be just for that one drawing. It doesn't have to be like encapsulating everything you ever do. But that point of view for that one idea will be yours alone, because it was you who were captivated by that scene, and you're going to make the decisions about how you carry things out. So as adults, as I've mentioned before, information crowds our brain. Because of this, it can be a struggle to compose a work that conveys what you're thinking. We tend to get bogged down in the details. You may feel you lack original subject matter or concepts. You may feel unsure about, how do I make that drawing my own? And this is where the pitfalls lie. It's easy to fall back on emulating others' work styles and hoping that this will substitute for creating our own. So it's great to learn from others, but there are perils to not charting your own course. The best way to move forward in these circumstances is to just draw, just do it. Because whatever comes out, when you just sort of plunge in there and start drawing, any subject will be you. That will be your voice. Your style will be developing. The longer you hold off on that and copy other people's techniques, the further you will get from developing your own style, or the slower. Now, that doesn't mean you can't. For example, here's J.M.W. Turner, fishing boats caught in a storm, like the perils you could go into. Now, it doesn't mean you couldn't say and go, wow, I really like what Turner did here, and I would like to try to figure out how he did those waves, and I'm going to do a drawing of that. Hey, that's fantastic. But then store that information in your memory. That becomes part of your database to pull on when you want to do a stormy scene of your own. You'll have remembered how to do that. So what happens often when an artist is pursuing a universal idea such as sadness? The first idea tends to be formulaic and unsatisfying. So in a panic, the artist retreats to a safe harbor. They rely too heavily on photography. They copy life so exactly that there's no extra room for imagination. They're doing it just to sort of get the picture down. They're reproducing rather than interpreting a scene. So this is natural. It happens to all of us. And each one of these things is not bad in and of themselves. All of us have had those opportunities of just, hey, I just really want to copy that jar on the shelf and I want it to look just like that. And there's benefit to that. There's benefit because while you're doing those sorts of things, while you are copying a master work, or while you're trying to copy from life, or while you're trying to emulate a photograph really carefully, those are useful exercises, but they're not a stopping point. So it's just really a lack of confidence that gets you from there to pulling in memory and imagination. So I thought this was this is often used as a painting to sort of show sadness and contemplation. So this city has just been lost, and this is a Polish artist, a painting. I believe it's in Warsaw, and he's contemplating this terrible news. Now he's a person who normally is supposed to be a jester and bring, life and hilarity to a gathering, and yet here he is in this completely opposite sort of pose. And so this is a very successful rendering of a big idea. So someone has just said, when they copy a photo or a drawing, it never looks like theirs, it looks like mine. That is wonderful. Because what you're doing is you're actually absorbing some of what they did, because you're trying to make it, you're thinking about the artist, their process, how they went about it. Or when you're, copying a photograph, you're pulling out the things that you like, but you're already editing. You're already sort of turning it into your own, putting your own voice to it. So that's wonderful. I actually think that's a really good result. So step 3 in this process, if we've talked about, practice, we've talked about observation, visual language. Step 3 is developing the ability to change and add, edit, exaggerate, remove, replace elements to create the most excellent version of your idea that you can. So the idea could be something simple. Like I said, it could be the beauty of light on the bowl of fruit. It could be the grandeur of the mountain range. It might be commentary on a social situation or your version of a famous tale. Whatever it is, you want to be able to communicate effectively and freely. So that happens once you've been practicing, when you know how to draw things, basically, when you filled up your memory bank with all sorts of objects and ideas and scenes and that sort of thing. So this is a fantastic and really huge painting. And I probably will have to blot some things out to get this painting up on YouTube. I'm not sure how they feel about this, but it is the most amazing painting, and it uses everything. Rubens would have used live models, but he would also have used his own memory and imagination of things to make it look, to give it this look and this feel in his own style, to make all of this happen, because everybody couldn't stand there as long as he would have needed them to in order to actually draw this. And if you think about it, every single time you look at an object and then you turn away to draw it or turn away to paint it, and then you look again, each time you're using your memory, you're exercising your memory by trying to remember that particular thing you saw, or that part of that thing you saw, long enough to get it down on the page. So the more you draw, and the more you try to do that, the better your memory becomes. Your memory will improve just by doing this exercise of drawing. And even if you're drawing from imagination, the same sort of thing will happen, because you'll be going through that slide deck in your head, that database in your head, looking for ideas, pulling up, what does a banana look like? What does an apple look like? So I can put it on my grocery list. All of that stuff contributes to the whole. So how do we do that editing and that exaggeration? And how do we decide what stays and what goes? So we were talking the last couple of weeks about, if it looks difficult, leave it out. If it looks like it's obvious, keep it in. Well, that's a good starting point. But this is the stuff that ties artists up in knots. Especially if you're looking at a photograph and you're going, which things should not be there? And how do I think about this scene when it's all there in the photograph? How do I eliminate it? So this is what happens is we safely decide, okay, I'm just going to draw everything in the photograph or everything in the scene, leaving nothing out and putting nothing extra in, and that way it's safe. So to add to the confusion, when we see a beautifully composed drawing or painting, we have no idea what they might have done to get to this point. And this particular work, for example, is one of those. We don't know. There could have been stuff lying on the floor. There could have been I was going to say a magazine rack, but there could have been an umbrella stand or something over behind her. We have no idea, because Whistler didn't leave it in there. So this is why I'm always keen on you doing a notan and a tiny little sketch before you get started on whatever, because this is where you start to use your imagination. Editing is using your imagination. Adding things in is using your imagination. In fact, doing a notan is using memory and imagination, because as you look at that scene and then you go down to sketch it on your page, you're editing down, you're remembering what that scene looked like and where the darks were, and you're turning it into a lovely little design on your page. So important. All right, so wrapping this sort of these ideas up, artists can exercise their memory functions to store the high-level information about objects and scenes to use as needed. Visual memory, observing and drawing all types of objects as a database of information, concentrating on accuracy and values. This is always useful. And then there is emotional memory, and that is observing the big picture of the scene. And this is, you think about yourself perhaps out in the woods, feeling, listening, smelling, experiencing everything, keying in and remembering what the major factors are that played a part in creating that response. This can even happen in a still life when you're like, oh, look at that beautiful light and those wonderful shadows, and the peaceful sense that these objects make together, or whatever it could happen to be. Then imagination, using a combination of memory and artistic inventiveness to focus on the idea of the scene, enhance the idea, and eliminate anything that isn't contributing. And that doesn't mean like it has to be taken out, but you can just make it less detailed, less obvious in the background, and then adding in, if you need to, elements to support the idea. So this is a lot of, sort of art philosophy. And so to give you guys a break from that, what I'd like you to do right now, we're going to just do the first drawing exercise. We've got a number to go through. This is the kind of memory exercise that you're probably thinking about when you think of, memory in drawing. And that is when we see something interesting like this and we need to look at it for a while, and then maybe we were walking by and we want to do a quick sketch of it later. We thought it was really interesting. So this is what I want you to do right now. For the next minute, just stare at this thing. Stare at it really closely. You can decide sort of how you would like to. You're going to draw it. You're going to sketch it really, really quickly once we finish this minute. So what are the things that are most important to you about this Calder sculpture? Now, some of you might go, okay, well, I see two big curves going, right to left, left to right, and one going the other way, and then there's an upright, and then there's something big. Others of you might go, oh, I love the kind of the boomerang swoops I see. I see boomerang swoops. Others of you might be looking at all the ways these pieces land on the ground. But what I would like you to do is try to imprint on your brain, not so much the details, but the big picture of this, the big sort of shape. It looks kind of almost like an animal or something like that. I better keep an eye on my clock, otherwise we'll go over this this minute here. But just keep looking at this, and in a second, I'm going to move on to another picture. And now I'd like you to go ahead and, not looking at this particular picture, but go ahead and just sketch really quickly the shapes of that sculpture we were just looking at. And while we do that, I'm just going to check chat. Okay, so somebody wanting to do an abstract painting is going to be pulling from the same kind of information. You're still going to be, your visual memory, your imagination still come into play, but what you're doing is you're going to be relying less on realism to show your big idea and more on your abstract mark making. Now, this is going to be extremely different for each artist. There isn't sort of one way to go about this. And I like to start people off sort of with realism to begin with, because it's easier to see the ideas. What you're looking for, though, with abstract drawing or painting is that intuitive feeling that something about the scene that you saw has been captured. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, because we'll be doing some exercises that might help with this. Now, in the meantime, so you've made your little sketch of what you remembered about this statue, and I'm just going to go back to it for a second so you can have a look and just sort of compare that quick sketch you did to what you ended up drawing. Now, I'd like to point something out here. It's not, in my opinion, all that important that your sketch and this statue look exactly the same, because what I'm more interested in you capturing is the feeling of the statue, feeling of the sculpture. If you wanted it to look exactly like the Calder, you could sit down in front of it and you could copy it. But I think what is more important is the Calder-esque-ness of it, which is that shape and the form and the way he goes about doing this. And you can bet that when Calder was creating his own ideas for his sculptures. He was doing lots of little sketches like you just did, trying to come up with a good balance, something that spoke to him. These are, once again, these abstract shapes to try to get to this idea of the sculpture. Because we have a tendency to think, when it comes to visual memory, about objects sort of as we would look at them in a picture dictionary, which is kind of how these objects are right here. So what we're looking at here is a bunch of tools and things laid out in a very, very sort of what I call that Egyptian view, right? We're not looking at them really foreshortened or this, that, and the other, except perhaps this tin mug over here or whatever that is. So what I'd like you to do right now is just pick an object to stare at for 45 seconds, then close your eyes and try to see the object in your mind. Draw either the scene or the object. I should have put object. Draw the object in the air or on the paper without opening your eyes. Just sort of try to, you see it in your mind's eye. You're going to try to draw it on the paper. And then open your eyes and try to draw it on the paper from memory. And what you miss, your brain will look for it the next time to improve your results. So just pick an object right here. I'm going to start the timer right now. Just stare at it with the idea that you're going to try to draw it from memory with your eyes closed and then draw it from memory with your eyes open. So one way to do this is you can look at the individual features, but it's the overall shape. That's the best place to start. Is look at the overall shape of this and sort of the, if you're picking the hatchet, for example, what makes a hatchet look like a hatchet? What makes a hammer look like a hammer? What are the overall proportions that you see here? So we just got a few seconds left. So at the 45-second mark, close your eyes and try to see the object in your mind and try to draw that object either in the air with your finger or on the paper without opening your eyes. Just sort of try to trace what you see in your mind's eye. Now, this is going to be a little confusing and different. So don't worry if you're like, what is she making us do? And then after you've done that really quick sketch, because it's probably very quick, go ahead and open up your eyes. Look down at the paper rather than up here at the visuals. I'll just move over here so you're not looking at it. And try to draw what was in your mind's eye. Try to draw that out. Just sketch it. Just take a couple of seconds, not an awful lot of drawing. But there are going to be things you remember about it, the overall impression, but the details are probably not going to be there. So I'm just going to go back so we can have a look, and you can check your quick sketch against what the object actually looked like. So this is an exercise you can do any old time. You can look at something, look at it for 45 seconds, close your eyes, try to draw what it is. I'm looking at a jar right here on my table, and then turn away and try to draw that object, just relying on what's in your memory. And what you're doing is you're training yourself. You're training yourself to notice things. So we're used now to observing out in nature, but those objects and things are still there for us to continue to draw. That's fine and that's good. But we want to also practice this business of really keying in on what things look like. So when we are looking at an object or a person or whatever, and then we turn to our canvas or our paper, what we're putting down is actually very close to what we saw. Because I think that frustrates people. When they look at something, they think, okay, I know what that looks like. I know what that oval looks like for the top of the teacup. I come over here and I start to draw, and I've done something different. I've made it a circle, or I've done something different. So this is just an exercise you can do anytime to practice your visual memory. So let's move on. This is the next visual memory exercise. Now we'll do exactly the same thing, but now we're looking at the scene as a whole. So go ahead and stare at the scene as a whole. I'll give you 1 minute, and then stare at individual objects I'll give you another 30 seconds to do that. Because what we're trying to do is we're trying to get a sense of the big idea. What's the big idea of this? And so we look at the whole thing, and the big idea, I guess to me, is, okay, the rusty tools, the antique box, everything's kind of dimly lit. And we've got these big metal objects of different shapes. So when I talk about a big idea, it can be simple as that. The big idea might be, and everything is lit coming from the right-hand side. So, whoops, I forgot to keep track of the time. I should make sure we do that. So keep looking at this whole thing with the idea that you're going to want to try to draw it in your mind. You're going to want to see this whole picture in your mind. And now go ahead and take some time to look at the individual objects, how they're put together. What are the key factors of each? But don't get too wound up in it. If it starts to get stressful, just look at the big picture again. Okay, now what we're going to do is I'm going to move this picture away from the screen, close your eyes, and try to see that scene in your mind. Draw the scene in your mind or on the paper without opening your eyes. Just sort of try to sketch it out. You'll need just a little bit more time than you did for the first one with the tools. Try to sketch it out, and then open your eyes, and either completing that particular drawing or doing another one, try to actually draw out what you see in your head that you've sort of imprinted in there. I'll give you about 30 seconds or so to do that, because I'm not expecting you to be able to really reproduce the scene, but I am interested that you practice this idea of looking at a scene as a totality, and then trying to think of and remember some of the objects within it, so that if you saw that toolbox, I'm going to go back to it now so you can just have a quick look at, see how your sketch compared. If you saw that toolbox and then later in the day go, gosh, I should have sketched that you had a chance to sort of look at it a little carefully, and perhaps your sketch does not show this exact scene, but it shows a similar type of scene where you have now overlaid your memory and imagination to make it something of your own. And so I think you can start to see how this business of not overly relying on exactly what's in front of us or exactly what's in the photo, and doing a sketch or two to sort of start stepping away, starts to give your own individual voice to something. So let's move on to the next one. Now, this is the kind of stuff that really gets artists in knots, okay? You see a scene like this, and right now you're probably all going, Elizabeth, what the heck are you trying to make me do? Well, let me just reassure you, I'm not interested in you drawing any of the specifics in this scene. But what I do want you to do is, you know how sometimes you'd come across something like this and go, wow, that's really cool. I'd love to draw it, but you don't really know where to start. So you might take a few pictures and walk away because it's just overwhelming. So instead of worrying about any of the specifics in this scene, what I'd like you to do is stare at the whole scene for a minute. Don't get distracted by the individual objects, but look at what is this scene about, right? It's about a big, long shelf. It's about, a bunch of clutter, but a bunch of vertical objects, lots of vertical objects, and then a few horizontal objects and a tabletop. And there's some other stuff on the tabletop, including a few things that are kind of laying off to what we see as a bit of an angle, all right? So it makes this huge kind of design. And I'd like you to look at the design of this whole thing. Don't look at the individual things at all, okay? Excuse me. So now close your eyes and picture this scene in your mind, all right? Picture the shape and the design of the scene, and try to draw this scene either in the air with your finger or on a piece of paper without opening your eyes. And then when you do open your eyes, try to draw the feeling of the whole scene on paper from memory. And I'm just going to move us away from this picture for a second while you do that. So what you're looking for, so this is how I start drawing and painting. And this is exactly actually how I also start drawing and painting abstract. Because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get in my head a design and a feeling of an idea or a scene. In this particular case, the idea of this monochromatic layout of these tools, this sort of antique shapes, and also the overall darks and lights. And then once I have this sort of sketch of this design, this sort of idea, I can then go either realistic in my interpretation or more abstract in my interpretation. But I've got this sort of framework of something that captivated me to start with. Whoops. So let's just move it back and look at that. So, have a look at your little sketch that you've done and sort of compare it to how this worked. You can see how easy it would be to be bogged down in these ideas. Say you were going to use this whole layout as sort of the starting point for realistic drawing. You could then, because you had this sort of framework to start from, you could pick and choose which objects you thought you needed. You could edit out a whole bunch. Perhaps you only need, 5 or 6 things up there. It's kind of like the folds. How many do you actually need? How many of these things do you actually need in order to tell the story you want? Now, you could be wanting to tell the story of complexity. In that case, you might want to draw every single thing you see, which is perfectly fine. You don't have to edit, but you've made a choice, a stylistic choice. You've decided on what the big idea is, the complexity, the design, whatever it happens to be. And now you're starting to create a piece of artwork that is your own. So what we're going to do next, is this exercise is going to involve putting together a scene based on a number of different images that I'm going to show you. And I'm going to give you a little time to do this. I'm going to show you all of the images a couple of times. So let's say we're on a walk. We're all on a walk together. We're walking to South Dakota and it's cold. And we're all out there and we come across this beautiful, beautiful scene of, it's snowing. There's this pathway. There's a little bench there. Actually, maybe it's part of a plowed field. And there's this structure, this barn in the distance, and the wonderful way these trees make these shapes. So we don't have our pencil and paper with us. So we just sort of look at this as we're walking and go, gosh, this is really wonderful. If it wasn't freezing cold out here, I'd really love to stand here and draw this. So but we do decide, hey, maybe I'm going to store this in my mind for a future drawing because it would make a really good drawing. So you think to yourself, okay, what am I looking at? What's so captivating about this? Or, what am I looking at? Okay, I'm looking at trees, very open, still landscape, and the trees are beautifully silhouetted. They're not pruned or anything like that. They're against the sky. They look so wonderful. And why? Why is this captivating me? Well, for me personally, it would be the contrast and the shapes of these objects against all the white. I would like that. And I would also be drawn towards the fact that there's this sort of vanishing point, that's leading me off. So those would be the things I personally would see in this scene that would captivate me. So the what and the why is always useful to think about. When you are captivated by something, go, what is it I'm seeing that's capturing my attention? Why do I like it? The what and the why, always useful. Okay, so we keep on walking. And what we see now is we see this beautiful grove of trees out in the distance and another tree close up. And now there's this little pathway too. And that's kind of nifty. And so we're adding this to our memory bank where we look at it as we're walking along. We look at how sort of the triangular shapes of those trees are formed. And we look at the contrast between the little triangular pointy shapes that are dark and the big tracery of the larger tree and how we can see through it, how lace-like it looks. So we're going to look at one more image, and then I'm going to ask you to construct your own little drawing based on what you've seen from memory, from this little walk that we're taking, using a combination of what you remember you've seen from these photographs or these scenes, but also enhancing whatever idea you like. So if you just want to use my idea, which is, the contrast and the shapes and that sort of thing, that's perfectly fine. You can add in things, like you can add in other things if you want to, or you can eliminate something that isn't contributing. So let's look at the third picture in this set. And then we're going to look at them all again. So we continue to walk. Now it's really snowing, but there's the wonderful kind of, handmade fencing going along the edge there. Looks like something beautiful design. Looks like something we might want to paint. And now what's really cool are the snow is sort of obliterating these trees in the distance, unlike the ones we've seen before with the tracery or the dark masses. Now we've got these very, very faint, maybe like a 10% value, right? Very, very faint trees. So as we're walking and thinking about all of this and thinking how we put together an image, we're creating this database of memory, fences, different types of trees, small buildings, different kind of paths. Now, in most of these scenes, the horizon line is about the same. So we're like, okay, we like this horizon line, but we want to mix and match all of these objects to make a scene. So let's just look at all of these images again. So first of all, we saw this. We thought that was pretty cool. Now, if you are sketching at this time, that's fine. I totally understand it. Whoops. Sorry, let's go back in. But it's good to practice looking at things like this and also creating without necessarily having the reference right in front of us. But however you want to do it is fine with me. So here's the next thing that we saw on our walk. You know, these types of trees and this big one. And then lastly, we saw the fence. So I'd like you to take a few minutes right now, about 5 minutes or so, to just draw a little scene. You can even you know, write down a list of what you'd like to have in it, you know, fence, some trees, little building, path, this, that, and the other, and decide sort of based on what you saw, what the feeling of this winter walk is like. It doesn't, now, of course, you know, we're somewhat limited by the fact that, you know, you can't, you know, draw or paint in white and this, that, and the other, but you can still sketch a layout for a potential drawing or painting based on the images that are now part of your memory. And it's as simple as this is, it's this kind of info gathering that will make your work unique, because none of you are going to end up with the same, from the same 3 photographs, none of you are going to end up with the same image to draw or paint. In fact, it would be kind of a fun thing to do, to have like an art show where everybody had to do something like this just to sort of see what they ended up with. And by practicing this, sort of like storing information in our brains as we go out for a walk, for example, seeing things and go, you know what, I would like to remember that. Now, it's always, and in fact, in my mind, best to make a little sketch while you're doing that, you know, even the simplest sketch, because it'll bring back this scene and you'll know it's there. It's one of the reasons why when I have, you know, good ideas for drawings or paintings, I do go ahead and actually, you know, sketch a little tiny notan or a thumbnail to put that idea down, because this is definitely visual note taking, right? What we're doing right now is we're not creating a whole drawing. We're just doing some visual note taking of really cool stuff that would belong in this snowy scene based on what we've just experienced. So a couple more minutes on that. I'm just going to check my notes here. Let's see. Okay, so I wanted to talk just a little bit while you're finishing up about imagination and about you know, we tend to think of, you know, when people say using your imagination, or children use their imagination to draw, we think of the imaginary creatures they make up, or the little villages that they build and all of that sort of thing. When we think about it in a more highly developed artistic way, it's good to remember that even creatures that we consider like imaginary creatures from our imagination, like you know, unicorns and giants and sea serpents and this, that, and the other, are all based somewhat on things that we actually have seen. You know, lizards and birds and people and all of that sort of thing, horses. So whoever the first artist was who decided to add a horn to the front of a horse and call it a unicorn, at some point, you know, something was done, either something was seen or an idea was put in someone's head. They pulled from their memory what you know, various different objects, you know, something long and pointy, you know, the horse, put them together and called it a unicorn. And we have taken that and made that creature part of our myths ever since. So when you're just adding a fence to a scene, you're doing sort of a version of that. You're relying on things that your brain understands and knows how they work, but you are manipulating, exaggerating, moving, editing, and changing in your own way to create your own type of scene. So an imaginary world does not have to be like C.S. Lewis with Narnia, or Tolkien with you know, his worlds, his Middle Earth. You are creating right here, when you do this sketch, you're creating your own little world. You can put people in it. You can add a couple of people just walking through this wilderness. It would be perfectly fine. You can base that, you know, on the memory of what people walking look like. And then here's the trick. So what happens sometimes is an artist does something like that and they go, oh gosh, those people don't look just right. Well, this is where you go out and you look for people, or you look for a photograph, or you ask someone to pose for you to get that bit right, so that that does actually fit within here. And if you're talking more about abstraction and wanting the abstraction of a concept like this, you know, the winter scene, the building, the fences, the trees, the shapes themselves, and the arrangement of those shapes, the design, the big idea, how you would get across this feeling of snow falling, things further away, things closer together, how each artist, each abstract artist develops that themselves is going to be very different. But the elements, the jumping off points are there regardless of what you're doing. Okay, go ahead and wrap up this sketch. We've got another exercise to do here. Okay, so I'm going to just let this play over and over again. All right, this is a message in a bottle. And what I'd like you to do is draw this. I'm not going to disappear it off the screen or anything like that. But as you can see, it's moving constantly. So what I want you to think about is not so much, you know, you look at this scene, look at what that looks like, you know, the bobbing, how the water looks, the ripples, and this, that, and the other. What I'm interested in you doing is not necessarily, you know, a photorealistic message in a bottle in the water, floating ripples. What I'm interested in is the idea, the big idea of what a scene like this looks like. You know, how far down in the water does a bottle sink when it has a message in it? You know, these waters are not big surf, right? They're sort of, there's sort of a calm to them, but there's also, you know, a little bit of movement to the water. You know, what does that look like? What does that feel like? And have your sketch that you make include whatever it is that you would like it to have, you know, more ripples, less ripples, you know, how does the page look in the bottle? How big is the bottle? Whatever it is that you would like your sketch to look like, that either does or does not depend on what you see in front of you. Doesn't it? So your bottle could be smaller, it could be larger, it could be darker, it could be lighter. The water could be, you know, doing different things. The ripples could be doing different things. But you're using reality as your jumping off point, and you're using your memory by every time you look at this this moving object, and then you're turning over to your drawing, and you're remembering something to put down on your page, but you're having to use your imagination because that thing isn't staying still. So you're having to create. You're having to create something over here. And this is really, really useful stuff, because what happens is if you're always used to still objects and things standing still and never moving, then opportunities are missed to capture what in life drawing people call the gesture. So if a person is, the life drawing model is you know, posing just for a minute and then moves and this, that, and the other, you only have a second to get sort of the gesture. Well, if you've ever sat, you know, in the passenger seat in a car or you know, on a bus or a train and looked at really cool stuff out your window and thought, gosh, I'd like to draw that, but we're moving by too quickly. This sort of exercise of just getting the gesture of the scene, you know, just trying to, it's gone by, but you're very quickly doing this teeny tiny little thumbnail of what you just saw. And then you're like, okay, I'm going to get the next one better. And as that one goes by, you're like, all right, I got a little bit of the contrast there because I saw it, I observed it, I got a feeling of how that building looked on the side of the cliff. So later you'll look at these little things and you're like, what the heck was that? But you'll remember in your mind, you will have imprinted that scene because you did this visual note taking. It's really important. So go ahead and wrap up your message in a bottle. I've got just a few closing thoughts here. Let's see. Oh, stop. Okay, let's see if I can get on. There we go. Okay, so for homework, so to speak. So actually, I included this picture by Mark Bremer, who is a contemporary artist, and he has done a lot of things in pencil, a lot of drawings. I was showing you paintings today because they had a lot of color to them, but I wanted to include this beautiful drawing where you can really see what's important to him, what his big idea is, the flow of the water, the mist of the water, and then the complexity of everything around it in contrast to this open white. So this is, I just thought that was a marvelous drawing. I think he's markbremer.com if you want to go and look at more of his work. Really great stuff. So what I'd like you to do sort of as homework is write down one subject matter that you're excited to tackle next in your own drawing time. Can be anything at all. Now, not like what you should be drawing, like, oh, I really should draw a whole bunch of pictures of my grandkids, you know. Now you may be really excited about that, but I'm looking for something a little more fun and attainable right now, you know. So it could be whatever you want. You could be like, well, I've got an interesting, bunch of crockery, and it would be fun to pile that all up and I could draw it. Either write or at least think to yourself why that subject matter is of particular interest to you, because the why is the concept, is the big idea that you're going to want to keep focusing in on, so that when you're drawing away, you're like, whoa, am I really showing how cool the shapes of this crockery are? Or am I getting lost because I've included too much background and I've made just a big bunch of stuff and you can't really understand how cool the crockery is? Of course, you want to think about how, using memory and imagination. So even if you've got this crockery sort of in front of you, you might decide that you would like to do something different. You might like to add an object in. You might like to change the light. The light might have changed during the daytime, and you might be like, I really liked it better when all the light was coming in through that window. I'm just going to remember what that looked like and draw it as if the light is still coming in the window, even though it's at nighttime. And then, of course, the how, the materials and technique, which are entirely up to you. So this is actually not just sort of homework for this week, but it is sort of the way to proceed. And you'll do this naturally. You won't necessarily always break it down like this, but this is sort of the way that you create a drawing where you've injected your own ideas, your own memory, your own editing, your own exaggerating and emphasis and everything into it. And you're drawing something that is exciting to you. Okay, so just to wrap up for today, our goal is to communicate, even if it's just to ourselves. And with abstract drawing and painting, oftentimes it is, if you'll feel satisfied, if you feel like you captured this feeling, this idea that you had in your head. But a lot of times the best, whether realistic or abstract drawing and painting, comes from having some idea. And those ideas come from various sources. They come from observing the world around you, as you already are doing. It comes from being able to hone in on that big picture. When you see something that captivates you, being able to identify why do I think that's really cool? So you're observing for details and shadows and forms and values and all of that, but you're also observing for the big idea. Practice your drawing technique. Just sketch and draw constantly. It doesn't matter what it is. Doesn't matter how good it is. You'll get better by doing it. Use your memory and imagination to edit, rearrange, replace, and create the most excellent version of your idea that you can. Draw objects and scenes with an emphasis on observing. So when you do just feel like, hey, I just don't want to do all that work, Elizabeth, right now. Can I just draw my coffee cup? Absolutely. Because while you're doing that, you'll be mentally recording how the shadows fall on a cylindrical object, how handles look, how the coffee sits inside there, all of that stuff. And then you use your memory to collect ideas that you want to convey as well, so that you bring all your senses into remembering. So like, say you do want to do a beautiful drawing of a forest path. Then you think about all the times you've ever been along a forest path and what that felt like and what that smelled like, and what the feeling of the air was like, and figure out how you can contribute that to your drawing to sort of get that entire feeling across, not just a visual representation of what the trees in the forest look like. And then use your imagination to rearrange elements to create a composition that gets across the point you want to make. And the point could be just like with the winter walk. Hey, this is a beautiful winter walk with these very delicate, objects out there, or whatever. It doesn't have to be something, earth-shattering. It can be just whatever your idea is. Okay, I'm going to stop screen sharing for the moment. All right, so that was a lot of information to introduce this subject. And next week, we're going to take this a little bit further. We're going to go further with imagination and further with memory. But in the meantime, I think that you can see how using your memory and imagination in this way enhances your drawing and starts to help you create a particular style. But there's no way to get there without the pencil miles. So I'm going to encourage you just to draw and paint as much as possible and try some of these exercises. Try them for yourself. You can have things on your screen and look away from them. You can have them on your table, look away, look out the window, look away. To start getting those little neural synapses clicking and remembering that information. All right, everybody, thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing you next week for the very last class of Summer of Drawing.